All right, so sometimes when we talk about direct marketing and we talk about testing, people will talk about A/B testing or they will talk about split sample testing. These are just additional ways to talk about the ways that people might test. And they're two terms that are interchangeable in the direct marketing business, but you ought to know a little bit about them in case you run across someone using these sorts of terms. So what is an A/B test, also referred to as a split sampling test? Well, an A/B test, you compare two versions of something to see which one performs better. The basic example, of course, is a drug test to see if one drug performs better than a placebo. Um, that is why the drug companies are doing what they're doing right now with vaccines. They're testing the vaccines to see if the vaccines are, in fact, good at reducing the likelihood of getting the COVID virus. And so they are testing A against B, their vaccine against some sort of placebo or other type of treatment that someone might be given. Okay, so in database or direct marketing, it's usually comparing two versions of an offer, two versions of the target audience, or two versions of the message, or two versions of the cosmetics around the message, or two versions of who is making the message, or whatever. And so in direct database marketing, A/B testing is just like scientific testing of vaccines, except it is looking at, obviously, different variables. All right, so in an A/B or split sampling testing, users will get one of two versions of the offer, the message, etc. And we measure to see which version gets a better response or more conversions or whatever the goal or the objective was of the testing. It might be more profits, it might be more revenues, and then we test and see which one works, and then we go in and we find something else to test against. And so the idea behind A/B or split sampling testing is that we split our audience into parts and then we give each one a different version of the offer or the message. So typical A/B tests or split sampling tests are version 1 versus version 2. That is A versus B, or typically, maybe even more often, the control, often the current best offer, pitch, or target audience, against a challenger, that is, a different offer, a different pitch, or making the offer to a different target audience. And we find out which one works better, and then if the challenger becomes the winner, it becomes the control, and we go out and we test it against other options. The results of A/B tests can have a lasting impact. They should be something you learn from for future decisions. You might learn about overall patterns. You might learn about the tone of your content. You might learn what actually is important to your customers. Remember we talked about Bob Stone's direct marketing principles. Well, maybe those principles don't hold true for your audience or your product category. One of the ways we can find out is do our own testing. So here's a typical picture of an A/B test. All right, what you do is you have 100% of your traffic or 100% of your audience, and you split it into two groups. It's usually, they say here, a 50-50 split, but that's not usually what happens. If you have a successful control offer, you typically put most of your efforts into your current best testing method, and you put somewhat less. So maybe it's an 80-20 split or a 75-25% split, where you send your best offer, your historically best offer, to the most customers, but you take out some customers, randomly assign them to the second pitch, and send them that second pitch, version A, version B, that sort of thing. So this is the basic, the basic principle then of A/B or split sample and testing. It's called split samples because we split the samples into groups and then make different offers or give them different kinds of conditions, the control condition or a challenger condition. All right, testing steps in action. So casually what we mean here is that we need to decide what we'd like to test. If you test more than one difference between versions, it's almost impossible to tell which variable influenced conversion. So you have to be very careful that if you try to test 2 or 3 things at once, you use something called a block design so that you can actually tease out the variables, to tease out which variables impacted what. But for the most part, you're almost always better off to keep it simple. Figure out what metrics you're going to use to compare the 2 versions. Will it be actual purchase rates, clicks on links, rate of return, reduction in bounce rates, account creations, taking some sort of measurable action? Decide on the percentage of the universe to assign to each version. That is, we take our population and we split it. And the question is, what percentage is going to be split into each one? And then, of course, we have to decide how we're going to make sure that that split is randomized. We then run the test, and then we look at the results. And they often provide great insight in the future A/B tests, and they include what we might look at next. Here I have a little bit more formal A/B testing steps that I found. I think maybe in our A/B testing primer that will be in the file. That is, pick one variable to test. Choose your goal. Set up the control group. Determine your sample size. Split your sample groups. Decide how significant results need to be. Make sure you're only running one test at a time on any campaign. Use an A/B testing tool. Test both variations simultaneously. Run the test long enough to get substantial results. Ask for feedback from real users. Focus on your goal metrics. And then find out which one did better, which version did better, and then take action based on your results and test again. Good database marketers are testing all the time.